Round 9 is in the books, and it was a doozy, but we've got Magic Round on the horizon, so let's get into it. Hello, guys, and welcome back to the channel where we have another tipping and predictions video coming your way. And last week, I'm sorry, guys, I was not very helpful. I'll fully own up to that one. I didn't pick as many upsets as I probably should have, and I got burnt for it. But with that being said, it's round 10 and Magic Round will hit Suncorp. So let's get into the first games. Starting off, the opening game of Magic Round is the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs taking on the Canberra Raiders, and both teams came off a win last week. A couple of changes to the sides. We've got Jacob Carraz coming back in on the wing for the Dogs ahead of schedule, so that is good signs there for your fantasy players as well. I know in Supercoach I have him personally, and he was a great start to the season for him. So hoping he can continue that form. And Canberra, we have young Xavier Savage playing his first game of the season, but it is on the wing. So he will be replacing Albert Hopewadi, and Seb Chris maintains his position at fullback. Now for the tipping and predicting part, I think both teams coming off a win, it's really tough. Dogs was more inspired. The Raiders nearly let it slip, and the refs came out and said that they knocked the ball on prior to kicking that field goal. So it could go either way again. But guys, I'm going to go with the Raiders. And mind you, I haven't got the first game of the round wrong all season. So with that being said, it's going to be Raiders 1-12. The second game of Magic Round is a home game for the Manly Sea Eagles up against the Brisbane Broncos, whose home ground is Suncorp. So I don't know how that one works. But with that being said, it seems for Manly there's been a bit of turmoil about them during the week. Josh Schuster and Dean Madison having a punch up at training. It's a bit more noise than I think they want at this point in time. On the injuries front, they've got one Trebojevic in, one Trebojevic out. Jake has come down with a calf injury and will be out for a couple of weeks. That being said, Tom Trebojevic comes back into the side hopefully this week. He's been named at one, so hopefully he starts there. On the Broncos side of things, they get Ezra and Payne Haas back after their suspensions for their hip drop tackles. The Broncos, bit off kilter last week, couldn't really get anything going in the second half against the Rabbitohs, but I expect them to beat up on a pretty depleted Manly side. And I say depleted not on the injuries front, but mentally. I think it's taken a bit of a hit this week. Seabold up against the team that cast him out a few years ago. He'll want to win, but I don't see it for the Sea Eagles. I'm going Broncos 13 plus. The first game of Magic Round Saturday is up next, and we have the New Zealand Warriors taking on the Penrith Panthers, and these sides have a couple of big ins for this week. Chance Nickel-Klokstad is come back into the side after his concussion, and Tohu Harris has been named to start at lock. We thought he might be out for a little bit longer than that, but it's good to see Tohu getting back up against the Panthers. Big game. Warriors have had a couple of big games in recent weeks, and they've been there or thereabouts, maintaining the fight, and that's what you love to see from the Warriors. The Panthers, on the other hand, they get James Fisher-Harris back, and that is a very welcomed return after their loss to the Tigers last week, providing the Tigers with their first win of the season, and absolutely nobody I know picked it, and I said it would have been the biggest upset I've seen in the last 10 years, and I was right. It was unbelievable to watch those Tigers players, but we'll get into that when they're playing this weekend. As for this game is concerned, I've got Penrith just winning this game because I think they'll want to show up again after last week. But the Warriors, they maintained a very close game in the wet against the Roosters. They were not too far away the week before against Melbourne. So the Warriors showing all kinds of heart, no matter who's playing in those jerseys. It seems to be a bit more of a, next man up mentality. And that's what you want to see from every team. But the Warriors are surprising everyone this year. But I've got to go the defending premiers to back up and, give the punters a bit more of a, answer a few questions from last week because I think it's needed and they're slipping away. They're kind of reminding me a little bit about the 2008 Melbourne Storm. Now, that season for the Storm ended pretty poorly, if you remember, a 40-0 loss in the grand final, but everything seemed peachy until they got there. But then when you did a bit more research, it looked a bit tragic and everyone could see it coming. But with that being said, I'm going to go Penrith 1 to 12. The next game on Magic Round Saturday is the Cronulla Sharks taking on the Redcliffe Dolphins. And in this one, it's going to be pretty tight, I think. With the Dolphins, they just don't seem to go away. They're very hard to keep out of the game. The Raiders thought they had it won last week, but the Dolphins, they came back again in stunning fashion and made it close, took it to Golden Point, and probably should have had the ball as well. So Wayne Bennett not too amped up in the press conference after that one. That's a funny watch if you want to go watch it. I'll leave the link down in the description for you guys. The Sharks, well, they handed it to my Cowboys last week. It was an absolute, tri-fest, shark feeding frenzy. It was. Everyone got white line fever, and rightfully so. The Sharks are playing some pretty good football at the moment. Unfortunately, they are going to be without Braden Hamlin-Uele after that hip drop tackle from Jeremiah Nanai last week. He's going to be out for at least 4 to 6 weeks at the moment with that knee injury. Saying that, though, they do get Dale Finucane back, so he will provide a little bit more steel there in the middle, a bit more backup, which is good for the Sharks. It's really hard for me to go away from the Sharks in this one, but the Redcliffe Dolphins have been playing some very good footy at Suncorp. So tough for me. I really want to go Dolphins, and I am. First upset of the week. I'm going to go the Redcliffe Dolphins to get a win, and it's going to be close, 1 to 12. Next up, we have the Saturday night game, which is the Melbourne Storm versus the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And this is potentially the game of the round. The Storm, fresh off a bye, they should be fit and ready to go. And the Rabbitohs absolutely trounced the competition leaders last week in the Brisbane Broncos. So this one's a real toss up. However, head to head is on the side of the Storm. They've won 8 out of their last 10 games against the Rabbitohs, and that is a very telling stat. However, the Rabbitohs broke a bit of a hoodoo against Penrith a couple of weeks ago, so I feel like they might be in the mood to break another one. I'm going to go Rabbitohs, but I think it's going to be close, 1 to 12. We move on to Sunday's games now, and it's the team that everybody has been talking about this week, the West Tigers taking on the St. George Illawarra Dragons. And oh my God, this Tigers side, the emotion that came out of them last week when Cleary kicked that ball out was a sight to see. And I tell you what, they've got a real find in this young fullback, Jareem Buller. He is an absolute superstar. I love that the Gold Coast Titans dropped him a few years ago and that he wanted to chase his dream in basketball. Didn't work out for him, but he's come back to rugby league and he's worked hard and really earned this spot at number one for the West Tigers. The Dragons, on the other hand, they've made an astonishing move and sacked Zach Lomax. He has been dropped from the team and also had an argument with Griffin on his way out. Yeah, not too sure what's happened to Zach Lomax there. He seemed to have a very good game last week. Had a try assist, had a pretty big long run that led to a try. And then we've also got the one-on-one steal that, he managed to get him against the run of play, which led to a try 2 plays later as well. So I'm not too sure what he did during the week or what he may have done prior to that to get dropped, but it's happened now, and Max Fianet has to come in and do a job there in the centres. With the turmoil going on at the Dragons at the moment, this may come as a shock to some people, but I'm actually going to back the Tigers to get back-to-back wins for the first time since April last year, where they beat Parramatta and Souths back-to-back. But I'm thinking it's going to be pretty close. I'm going Tigers, 1 to 12. The next game up on Sunday is the Sydney Roosters taking on the North Queensland Cowboys. And Jesus Christ, my Cowboys, I don't even think they got off the plane last week. It was an embarrassment down at Cronulla, 44 to 6. And I heard nothing but excuses from Todd Payten at the moment. There's got to be some serious change there. I don't know how we have gone from third on the ladder last year to now facing the possibility of getting the wooden spoon with the Tigers winning last week. It's just ridiculous. Nothing's really changed apart from the fact that we've had a few injuries this year. Jeremiah Nanai is also suspended for the next 3 games, meaning that Helam Lukey will come back in after an injury. So he's straight back into the fire at this point in time. Tom Chester, though, had a season ending knee injury, which is unfortunate. It looked like his star was starting to really shine out there on the field. And I'm a bit upset about that one, but there's nothing we can really do apart from move on and face up against the Sydney Roosters side that toughed it out against the Warriors last week. And yeah, I think they needed that win. They needed to have a good, solid defensive effort. I think after the Anzac Day debacle that was the Dragons scoring 26 points, don't know how that happened still, but I think with the Roosters, they will get the win here. The Cowboys are just looking a little bit too dysfunctional, a little too devoid of ideas at the moment, and I'm really worried about our injury toll, and it's just one of those things where I can't back my own team. I hate to do it, but I think the Sydney Roosters get this done, 13 plus. Final game of Magic Round. As it comes to a close, we have the Gold Coast Titans taking on the Parramatta Eels. Both teams fresh off a win last week. The Gold Coast Titans, I think, surprised a lot of people. However, I think this side is still looking pretty good. They've had no Beau Fermor for the entire year, but it hasn't really worried them to this point. They managed to hold that lead last week, and that's something that I spoke about in my round 9 predictions that they needed to once they got a lead, they needed to hold it, complete their sets, not make stupid plays. And David Fafita was absolutely outstanding last week. He was my player of the game, and I think a lot of people's as well. I just think with the Parramatta Eels, though, they're kind of building a bit of form. I think last week, though, the Knights really didn't turn up, and that was just, played into Para's hands quite well. They love to spread the ball. Kalen Ponga missed a ton of tackles, and that made it pretty easy for Para to make really good ground in that game. I'm not so sure it was Parramatta playing well or whether the Knights were just non existent out there, but in this one, I'm actually going to go with the Gold Coast Titans. I think that they're playing some very solid football at the moment. Their defense is pretty good, and Para may find it not as easy as it was last week. I think there will be a bigger Gold Coast fan base there for this game, as it's the last game of the round and it's also in Queensland. So I'm actually going to go with the Gold Coast Titans here, guys, 1-12. Anyway, guys, that's it for my tips and predictions this week. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. We're bringing out so much content in the next couple of weeks, guys. So stay tuned for more.